I am Rev Dr Mark Boyea, and once again, I welcome you here to First Parish Church Congregational in beautiful Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. The congregational part of our name is a reflection of our long-standing Christian tradition and commitment to democratic governance and freedom of conscience. Therefore, we are a spiritual community where no matter who you are or where you are on your life or faith journey, you are fully welcome. And so in that spirit, I now fully welcome you to join us in the singing of our opening hymn, God our Author and Creator.
Bear the message true that
I invite you to now join me in our opening prayer, the words to which are printed in your online bulletin. God of all creation, shine your light into our lives today. Lead our thoughts closer to your divine mind. Draw us closer to your sacred heart. Open our spirits to your eternal wisdom. Challenge us, inspire us, and guide us beyond where we are today, individually and as a community of your people. And may your presence grow in us, moving us toward greater union with you and your ways. For it is only with and through you that we can become our best and truest selves. And may we do all this in the name of the one you sent to show us and teach us your essence and ways, our brother, teacher, and leader, Jesus, the one who gave us the words we pray to you now. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Still and know that he is God. Be still and know that he is holy.
Be still, O restless soul of mine,
bow before the Prince of Peace. Let the noise and clamor cease. Be still and know that he is God. Be still and know that he is faithful.
Consider all that he has done.
Stand in awe and be amazed, and know that he will never change. Be still, be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, and know that he is God. Be still, be speechless. Be still and know that he is God. Be still and know he is our Father.
Come rest your head upon his breast. Listen to the rhythm of his unfailing heart of love, beating for his little ones, calling each of us to come.
As we come to our time of prayer, I ask you to keep in your thoughts and hearts and minds and spirits the fact that it is a sad day for this particular spiritual community. We are mourning the passing of beloved longtime member Vin Terrell, who returned home to God early Wednesday morning. Vin was in his 90s, and he was a member of this spiritual community for about 65 years. Just remarkable and an enormous loss for our spiritual community. We hold Vin's family in our thoughts and prayers, as well as all of those who knew Vin, both within these walls and in the greater community for all these years. Also ask you to hold in your thoughts and prayers Harry Clark. Harry is a friend of the Warrens, and Harry was back in surgery on Friday. He has a new infection, but is out of surgery. It went as well as possible, and he is recovering currently in the ICU. We ask you to hold in your thoughts and prayers, celebrate. Tomorrow is Nancy Holmgren's birthday, so we celebrate with Nancy Holmgren. It is also, I also ask you to hold in your thoughts and prayers all of our graduates. Graduates here in the community of Manchester by the Sea, graduates throughout the country, high school graduates, college graduates. They have had the last year of their high school and college education enormously disrupted, unable to attend group commencement exercises. And again, it's easy to say, well, in time, that won't matter so much to you, but now is that time for them. And so it is a big deal for them, and we do not take that lightly, so we hold them in our thoughts and prayers as well. And then the last thing I ask you to hold in your thoughts and prayers, I have had a tradition in my past churches, the last Sunday in June, of celebrating and recognizing the members of our choir. And we are obviously unable to do that together today, but I would like us to do that virtually. And so our thoughts and prayers and enormous gratitude to the members of the First Parish Church choir under the tremendous direction of Dr. Herman Weiss, and before that, Donald Dunn. So again, I ask you to keep them in your thoughts and prayers with the gratitude that they are deserving of. So now I invite you to add any other prayer intentions you might have, share them with whoever you might be with, or simply keep them in the silence of your hearts and minds and spirits, and let us offer all of that now to our God. I invite you to join me in prayer. Holy One, we come together this day to thank you. We come together to hear you speak to us, to better understand how you call us to live in all of our days, but especially in these days. So much illness, so much death, so much struggle over injustice and inequality. It can be hard sometimes to see hope, to believe in the possibility of new and better times ahead. It can be hard to recognize all you have blessed us with, let alone be grateful for it. But you have given us so much. You have given us everything we need, all the material and social and spiritual resources we need for these days. So we ask you to help us use them wisely and well. Use them wisely and well for the benefit of those who need support the most. We ask you to help us use our resources and our influence, however large or small, to help lift others up, to help all God's people thrive as God created them for. Help us to be willing to open our eyes and ears and minds and hearts to new people and places, to new ideas and perspectives. Help us to commit ourselves to what is right more than having to be right, to what's needed more than just our own needs, to what is good in your eyes more than what's merely good for us. And we ask you, O God, to help us do that today. For far too many of your people have waited far too long for what is good and right in your eyes. Amen. And let us share these words from the 9th chapter of Luke's Gospel. And the translation I'm using today is called The Message. It is written by the renowned writer and pastor and theologian Eugene Peterson, and he has rewritten the Bible, retranslated it in a contemporary form of English. They started arguing over which of them would be most famous. And when Jesus realized how much this mattered to them, he brought a child to his side. Whoever accepts this child as if the child were me accepts me, Jesus said. And whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. You become great by accepting, not asserting. Your spirit, not your size, makes the difference. John spoke up. Master, we saw a man using your name to expel demons, and we stopped him because he wasn't one of our group. Jesus replied, don't stop him. If he's not an enemy, he's an ally. When it came close to the time for his ascension, Jesus gathered up his courage and steeled himself for the journey to Jerusalem. He sent messengers on ahead. They came to a Samaritan village to make arrangements for his hospitality. But when the Samaritans learned that his destination was Jerusalem, they refused that hospitality. When the disciples James and John learned of it, they said, Master, do you want us to call a bolt of lightning down out of the sky and incinerate them? Jesus turned on them. Of course not. And then they traveled on to another village. On the road, someone asked if he could go along. I'll go with you wherever, he said. Jesus was curt. Are you ready to rough it? We're not staying in the best inns, you know. And Jesus said to another, follow me. But that one said, certainly, but first excuse me for a couple of days, please. I have to make arrangements for my father's funeral. But Jesus refused. First things first. Your business is life, not death, and life is urgent. Announce God's kingdom. Then another said, I'm ready to follow you, Master, but first excuse me while I get things straightened out at home. But Jesus said, no procrastination, no backward looks. You can't put God's kingdom off until tomorrow, so seize the day. It wasn't just another moment. It was the moment. For the writer of Luke's gospel, it was the moment. For the writer, this section that we just shared marks the transition into what scholars refer to as the travel narrative or the travelogue. Travelogue. That's a lovely sounding name, isn't it? Makes it sound as if Jesus is about to go off, according to one of my favorite British expressions, on holiday. Jesus is going on holiday. Which he kind of is, in one sense, because Jesus is about to head off to Jerusalem for the start of the Passover festival. A holiday. Really a holy day. But he's not going there for a vacation. He's not going there for fun and games. He's going there to make a stand, to take a stance. His last stand. His last stance on God's behalf of God's call for justice and equality and the care of the least in society. He's going there to make one last stand against the powers and the systems and the forces that have oppressed and suppressed God's people, his people. He is going there to make one last stand against the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire that rules Jerusalem and all of Israel by force. The Roman Empire that considers itself superior to all other lands and peoples. And he is going there to make one last stand against the religious leaders who have chosen to align themselves with Rome instead of justice and equality and care for the least in society, chosen to align with Rome in order to maintain their own position and power and privilege. Thing is, even before he can go to Jerusalem to make that last stand, Jesus has got other things to be concerned about besides the Romans and the religious leaders. He's got to be concerned with his very own closest followers, his disciples, the ones who are supposed to be his allies. Even before they start out for Jerusalem, the disciples are arguing with themselves. They are arguing with each other about who will be the most famous. Who's going to be the most famous when they get to Jerusalem with Jesus? Who's going to be the most famous when he overcomes the Roman Empire? Who's going to be the most famous when Jesus' movement becomes the way of the world? They're worried about who's going to become most famous. And then one of them, John, tells Jesus that they had seen somebody casting out demons, expelling demons in Jesus' name, expelling demons, helping to heal someone who had found themselves in some type of physical or emotional or social or spiritual pit. They had seen somebody helping in that way in Jesus' name and stopped that person. Stopped that person because, well, he wasn't one of them. He wasn't on Team Disciple. Then when they finally do start out for Jerusalem, they learn that a village in Samaria that they are going to be passing through, one that they were hoping to spend the night in. It was more than a day's journey to Jerusalem. Well, the people in that village aren't going to receive them. They won't let them stay there. They won't provide that hospitality. Why? Family squabble. See, the Samaritans and the Jewish people are really, they're related. They're kind of half siblings or cousins. But over time, the people of Samaria developed their own interpretation of the religious law and also determined that a place called Mount Gerizim would be their holiest site, the site of their worship instead of the temple in Jerusalem. And so a great deal of animosity had grown between those two sides over the years. And so the Samaritans, when they learned that Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem for the Passover festival, declined to provide hospitality. And James and John, two of the leaders, two of the lead allies of Jesus, asked Jesus if they can call down lightning and wipe the place out. Well, of course they did. As we learn in another part of the Gospels, James and John had a nickname. They were brothers. They were called the Sons of Thunder. So, of course, the Sons of Thunder want to call down lightning out of the sky to destroy somebody. And then finally, Jesus encounters three would-be followers. would-be disciples, would-be allies. One of them wants to go with him, wants to become an ally, but Jesus isn't so sure. Jesus isn't sure that that person is ready, that they really understand what that entails, that they might not be ready for the discomfort of it. As Jesus puts it, we don't exactly stay in the best inns. And then there are two other would-be allies. But they're both not ready because they've got stuff to do. They've got family obligations, and genuine family obligations. But Jesus says, no, you can't put it off. We'd forgive Jesus if by this time he begins to wonder if anybody around him gets what it means to be an ally. To be an ally on behalf of God's call for justice and equality and care for the least in society. This month that is finishing, this month of June, we have seen a remarkable convergence of events. We have witnessed the continuation of a pandemic which has caused an enormous amount of suffering, but especially an enormous amount of suffering for the poor and the elderly and people of color. We have witnessed a new and significant rise in interest and efforts on behalf of racial justice. And this month has been Pride Month for the gay and lesbian community, marked by a Supreme Court decision that has affirmed their equality in the workplace. Equality in the workplace for the LGBTQ community. It has been a remarkable month. It is a month that has, on the one hand, reminded us of just how much good there is in our society, how much progress has been made for justice and equality and care for the least. But at the same time, a month that has also reminded us that there is still a lot more work to do, a lot more progress to be made for those causes, God's causes, that there is still a great need for allies to those causes. And an ally, that kind of ally, is someone, and I'm going to borrow from a definition offered by the renowned black writer and professor Roxane Gay. Gay actually doesn't even like the term ally, but also recognizes that it's a term that we still need. And basically, Roxane Gay says that an ally is someone who stands up and takes on the problems of others as their own, someone who figures out a way to use the resources and the influence that they have, however large or small, for the benefit of those people, and does all of that, does those things, even if they don't or never can fully understand what it is like to be seen as and treated as less than because of your race or your gender or your sexuality or your age or your ethnicity or your mental or physical capabilities or your economic status or your religion. So that's what an ally is. But how do we do it? What does that mean? What are the basic principles for being that kind of ally for God's people? Well, there are countless books and articles and internet sites that you can go to find lists of principles, lists of do's and don'ts. Or you could just look at this. Just look at this section from Luke's gospel. Because in it, Jesus gives a pretty good set of principles for what it means to be an ally or to not be an ally. In order to be an ally, Jesus says, it has to be about them and not us. Them and not you. That's the first thing. It's not about being recognized for our efforts on behalf of justice and equality and care for the least. It's not about getting famous for those efforts like disciples were so concerned about. It's not about a competition to see who can demonstrate how woke they are or apologize the most and the loudest for whatever role they may have played or continue to play in racism. It's not about that. It is about them. It is about that child. Welcoming and receiving and serving that child, the child that Jesus uses to symbolize, to represent all those people who are marginalized and in need of allies. Jesus also tells us here that being an ally is about doing what's right and not who is or isn't on the right team. Whoever that person was who was casting out demons, who was helping, whoever it was that was in that emotional or physical or social or spiritual pit and doing it in Jesus' name, that's what mattered. The fact that they weren't part of Team Disciple was irrelevant. It is about doing what's right for God's people and not who is or isn't on the right team. And it's not just the disciples. Organized efforts on behalf of justice and equality and caring for the least in society have time and time again stumbled on that kind of thing, stumbled on infighting about who did or didn't start the movement, who is or isn't the leader of the movement, who does or doesn't deserve the credit for it. It happens all the time. It is a normal shortcoming of the human condition. It is an easy trap for us to fall into. But it's about doing what's right, not who or isn't on the right team. Jesus tells us here also that being an ally is about giving life and not destroying it. It is about the fullness of life for all of God's people. It is about destroying, dismantling what is wrong, but not destroying who is wrong. James and John want to destroy that entire village and the people in it, when their concern should have been doing what they could to resolve the forces that had led to the animosity in the first place. Being an ally, Jesus also tells us in this passage, is about being willing to get uncomfortable. Being willing to not always stay in the best ends. Getting out of our comfort zone, out of our silos, our bubbles, our political, social, racial silos and bubbles, and exposing ourselves to new ideas and new people and new perspectives and new places and new circumstances, and not just once or twice, but regularly. It has to be a practice, not a moment. And then lastly, Jesus tells us here that being an ally is about both now and tomorrow. As we talked about last Sunday, Jesus is not anti-family. He appears to do the same thing here as we talked about last Sunday, denigrating family. He tells the one would-be ally that he can't go make his father's funeral arrangements, tells the other can't go attend to the family business that that person wants to. It's not about denigrating the family. Just as it was last Sunday, it is the same this Sunday. It is hyperbole. It is something Jesus did a lot of. Hyperbole for the sake of an important spiritual point. In this case, hyperbole to get across the need for urgency. The need for urgency. That the time to become an ally is now. Because those who are in need of allies have waited too long for those allies. But it's also about tomorrow. The marches are good. Protests are good. I commend the young people here in Manchester by the Sea who have organized and led those recent events. But those things alone will not make the difference. There have been marches and protests for generations, for centuries. To do what God needs done, to break down those systems and structures and sources of power that perpetuate injustice and inequality and lack of care for the least in society, requires staying power. It will not happen overnight. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And really, it's an ultra-marathon, perhaps even a never-ending marathon. Because the attitudes, the beliefs, those things that underlie those systems and structures, those are a natural part of the human condition. Like the Roman belief that one group of people is superior to all others. Those things are constantly lurking nearby. It wasn't just another moment for Jesus and his allies. It was the moment. The question for us now is, will this be just another moment? Or will it be the moment? The moment when we stand up and become an ally, or a better ally. It won't be easy. We won't be going on holiday, but we will be helping God to bring about a new and holier day. A holier day of justice and equality and care for the least on behalf of all God's people. Amen.
God be in my
like to once again thank you for joining us this morning, and for those of you who are part of the First Parish Church congregational community, I hope you'll stick around for our virtual friendship time starting in a few moments. Also a reminder that beginning next Sunday and running through the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, we will be holding our worship celebrations at 9 a.m. and not 10 a.m. We will return to the 10 a.m. start the Sunday after Labor Day. I would like to thank our choir of Dr. Herman Weiss and Rebecca Shrimpton and Paul Knox for leading us musically today, and also thank Richard Smith and Cindy Boyer for helping to bring this time to you. So now, my friends, it is time for us to leave this sacred space and go out into the world, ready to be a better ally for Jesus, a better ally on behalf of God's call for justice and equality and care for the least in society, our society and all societies, so that we can help bring about that holiest of all days, the day when the kingdom of God arrives. And for that call from God, we say thanks be to God. Amen.